The purpose of ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online is considered to be Web GIS, the ability to have web services and capabilities which can be consumed between different nodes into applications and web. To talk about Web GIS and how it can be used across the applications, I'm going to pass across to Ed Cook.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Hopefully those at the back, you're doing all right with the slides. Recognise it's probably 2K away from the screen. Awesome. So you would have noticed the ArcGIS Online update this year was a little bit different, and we're focused on a specific component in particular, which was data pipelines. We received your feedback that actually you want to be stepped through some of these components that are really integral, like the web maps, the web apps, sharing and collaboration, and a little bit more detail. So we've really tried to rejig it this year. So we're looking forward to showing off the Web GIS capabilities across these 4 different elements. So you would have seen this slide earlier. It had a different title, we just renamed it, but this is really what we're trying to hit on here. We're seeing this pattern of use where rather than having siloed desktop users, we're seeing organisations embracing both online and enterprise and using it for this wider enterprise system. We call it a Web GIS enabled organisation. It doesn't matter where you're connecting from and what you're accessing, you're all hitting the same environment to do so. And where it all starts, once you have all that content ready that either you're using from external sources or publishing in-house, is really bringing it into a map. It is a GIS after all. And it's amazing how far some of the simple components like symbology have come in the web mapping sphere. And we wanted to do a specific update that just really touched on what's new in the map viewer. And I think you'll be pretty excited by some of the previously desktop-only capabilities that are starting to sneak in there. So rather than waffle through, I'm actually going to hand over to my colleague Jess to give you an update in that space. Go for it, Jess.
Thanks very much, Ed. So in this demonstration, we are going to start with a map centered in Canterbury. And as you can see here on the left side of my map, I have my contents pane, which is full of all the layers that I need. You may have noticed that there is a small change in this, and that's now we suddenly have a search bar in the top. So using this, I'm going to search through all the layers that I have here to find the one that I need, in this case, terrain. But beyond just being able to search through it, we can also organize this data a little bit better. So with our group layers, I have 3 layers that are a little bit difficult to switch back and forth with. As you can see, they're pretty big. Now, not only can I save this item as its own group layer to use in other maps, but if I were to click on this group layer and then go to my properties, I have this option now for exclusive visibility. And if I turn that on, what it means is we get those radio buttons, just like we showed earlier in ArcGIS Pro, making it very easy to just switch between those layers. So let's say we've organized what we need to organize, and now we want to do some analysis. In this case, I want to understand the risk of flooding and landslides in my area, so I want to calculate slope for this. So if we go to our analysis tools, we have some updated tools that we can use here. In this case, to get slope, I want to use surface parameters. And while this tool is mostly the same, there's a couple of updates that make it just a little bit easier to use. In this case, I want to create slope off a terrain layer that is provided by Esri. And I have now this option for an optional mask layer. And what this allows me to do is either actually draw an input feature. So in a moment here, I'll be able to load up a sketch. So in this case, I could draw where I want to mask for that slope. In this case, I actually want to use my own layer that I have here for the boundary of my own farm. So instead, I can choose that layer and limit the results of my slope. Now, if I were to run this, I would get a result that looks something like this. As we can see here, slope clipped to exactly that boundary. But now that say I've done my analysis and we go to the final stage of our map, which is design and how to effectively communicate this to my audience. So I'm going to take a look at the interactivity of this map. As you can see here, I have this awesome result from my analysis, but I need to have my audience be able to interact with this map to get those results. So I'll turn off this, and instead I will turn on my own data. So as you can see here, my farm is split into paddocks. I'll go to this layer and then to the pop-up tab. And down here, I've added a chart to my pop-ups that will summarize some information. And now there's an update that we can kind of customize these charts. For instance, changing the colors. I'll change this to a paler color, for instance, and then we can see that update take place when I click on the map. And now we have this pretty nicely colored pie chart that's nice and interactive in our map. But while we're on the subject of color schemes, one other set of data that I have in this map beyond land use here is some assets. That's what these little colored dots are here. Now, if I go to the properties of this, we can see that this is categorical data, that I want a different symbol for each of these assets. And if I wanted to customize and add my own icons for each one of these different assets, previously we'd have to upload the JPEGs for each and every symbol. But I don't want to do that in this case because I'm going to be making multiple maps and I want to use my organization style. So I'll click on this little pencil here, I'll change my current symbol, and with this plus, I can now add custom styles published from ArcGIS Pro. By adding that style, now I've preloaded all those icons that I want to use, and I can select them. So the design of my map is done. I've created this amazing modern map that's quite interactive. It has all the color schemes and images that I want. But sometimes we need to look into the past to get insights into the future. So in this case, I want to add some media. Some of you may be familiar. This came out a little bit ago, and that we have the ability to add media, which is basically just georeferencing images onto our maps. And as you can see here, nothing's changed with this. We can still change the transparency. We can still rotate it and georeference it as we need to. But now, let's say I've georeferenced that exactly where I need it to be. If I go to my content, and I type that layer correctly, I have now saved it as its own layer. So that georeferencing will stay put, and so that I can add it to my map and have it in the same edge. No matter how many maps I have, it's available. And if we take a look at what that appears like on my map, as we can see here, I have this awesome historic georeferenced image on here. Now, I'm going to switch gears briefly to show you one last feature. I've been in the map viewer and I've been kind of at a rural landscape. To switch gears, though, I'm going to go to the 3D scene viewer instead and go a little bit more urban. So as we can see here, this is a pretty popular 3D integrated mesh of Christchurch downtown. As we can see here, it's really realistic, but there's a lot of buildings, and now we have a little bit more of an intuitive way to explore this data layer. If I were to click on this, we have a new feature here that's called mesh modifications. And what this allows me to do is that if I draw a shape here, I want this building, so I'll clip right on there. And now we have the ability to clip, so I can see perhaps the district plan zones underneath it. I could mask it, so everything else goes away. All the noise is cleared away to just that building. Or I could replace it with a different mesh, or in this case, some satellite imagery to see that top-down view. And so this feature has just been added to try to make sure that this 3D scene viewer is as intuitive and as easy as possible to navigate for your guys' future 3D work. Thank you.
That was awesome, Jess. Great job. So it's pretty exciting, eh? Even simple things like styles, being able to load them into your web map, have everyone else in your organisation able to leverage that. That's really powerful. You'll note that we're focusing very much on ArcGIS Online with this Web GIS segment. But for those who are just using Enterprise, have this as a bit of a peek into the future. As you're aware, often capabilities get released into online first, and they make their way in future versions across the enterprise. So think of this as almost a forward planning team session to see, what you could be taking advantage of for those self-service workflows where people are just using Web GIS and maybe not desktop. Thanks again, Jess.